When people complain about Trump and they believe that he is the reason or is the cause of all of the detrimental problems that we're facing today, when in reality, he's actually helping us eventually alleviate those problems because it's been blown wide open. There are no secrets. There's a thing called quiet fascism, and this is about people's being creatures of comfort rather than truth. And so this video should crystallize exactly what we're talking about.
I prefer the quiet fascism, not the flashy, in our faces, all over international news kind of fascism. The kind that genocides 100 million natives and then teaches that the land was empty upon arrival, and then 200 years later continues to break treaties and exploit the lands it promised to leave alone for the ones who survived. The kind that was built on the backs of black folks, kidnapped from their homes, chained in piles on ships where they would be disembarked into a lifetime of slavery, and again, 200 years later, pay no reparations for. Instead, it segregated folks by the color of their skin, ensuring that the colorless, the cultureless, were always superior. A segregation so calculated and cutthroat that it inspired, ensuring that the colorless.
What is so superior about this woman, I wonder? I just think it's a coping mechanism of inferiority, and that's
of course, it's fear-based. It's fear-based. But yeah, no, I sent you this.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm saying I just happened to see that sign, and I'm looking at the sign and I'm thinking the only type of people that think like this or make these types of expressions are people that have deep-seated fears about their own personal insecurities. And so this is their way of lashing out. That's it. That's a huge
and
part.
A lot of brainwashing from childhood. That helps facilitate it. Yeah.
There's that too. I agree.
The cultureless were always superior. A segregation so calculated and cutthroat that it inspired the eventual South African apartheid and rise of the Nazis in Germany.
That was our idea.
And then rejected those seeking refuge from that hell they inspired. That's the quiet kind of fascism. That's the quiet.
1 second.
What do you keep doing? Why do you stop?
Those seeking refuge.
Was a very common problem leading up to what became the final solution in 1942. But keep in mind, it's the same problem. The Nazis, no credit given, but Hitler for many years was never attempting a genocide of the Jewish people. He just wanted them out of Germany. And eventually he just wanted them out of Europe altogether. But as many people know, when they attempted to immigrate to other places, whether because of Kristallnacht or whatever, they were refused entry. And
like here.
And this particular ship of Jewish refugees was refused U.S. landing in 1939. This was right after Kristallnacht. That's when this happened.
And it wasn't just one ship that they refused. I mean, they're talking about one in particular, but there were several. I mean, it wasn't just once.
Yes. And that is just an example of how we got here.
Refuge from that hell they inspired. That's the quiet kind of fascism. The kind that easily forgets what it's done because it distracts its loyal followers with shiny new rights and illusions of progress, but only for some. And that's enough for those who enjoy comfort at the expense of others. I prefer the kind of fascism that murders 1 million Iraqis, 300,000 Afghans, 100,000 Pakistanis, and got you to cheer for it. Got you to sign your kiddos up to go overseas and do the killing in the name of your freedom that is never actually under threat because you've never actually had it. The kind that rained bombs over Yemen and Syria just for funsies. Just to show the world that we can now kill you with flying robots without ever having to leave our couch. What a milestone. The kind that locks kids in cages and doesn't broadcast it on their Instagram. The kind that deports people, again, seeking refuge from violence it's caused or inspired. The kind that baits you with fear, holding your perceptions of freedom and the protection of already non-existent rights hostage for your vote every 4 years, dangling your rights to maintain ownership over your body, to love who you love, to have access to medicine and food in front of your face like a carrot to a horse, so you just keep moving towards that edge until you don't even realize that you've fallen off of it ages ago. The kind that rejects that things like food and medicine and even education are to be viewed as a human right. The kind that will jail you for speaking out against yet another genocide that it is spearheading. The kind that will jail you again for refusing to pay the taxes they insist on using to.
It is amazing how we put this together today about what Governor Abbott is attempting to do in Texas for San Marcos, saying we will not allow our actual tax dollars. Yes, there's a difference between state and local versus federal.
Right.
Our local tax dollars, we refuse to allow this to be sent to Israel. And Abbott is saying, not only is this anti-Semitic, but I am going to withhold government contracts from your city if you even attempt to do this.
People want to know where they can we put the link to this in the description, like, so people can find this? Because I don't remember where it came from. It came up on my
Colin, I
Instagram, so
sent
I
you the link
forwarded it.
if you can. Yeah.
Just stick it
you
to
have
in
anything
the so
description.
people can see. Yeah.
Publicly slaughter children, to starve children, to maim children, to set children on fire while they're sleeping, desperate for a break from the bombs demolishing their homes, their schools, their hospitals, their safe places, bombs killing their parents, their siblings, their friends, bombs that you're paying for. That's the kind we want. I prefer the quiet fascism, the kind that we all know is permeating through every part of our everyday, but that is easy to ignore because the news anchors, the journalists tell you it's okay to look away from that. I prefer the quiet fascism. That's what we're supposed to say, right?
If that picture ain't worth 1,000 words, I don't know what is. This is probably New York City. This is one of those outdoor fancy restaurants.
I hate this clip, and I'm going to tell you why I hate this clip. This particular, this scene, because I've seen it before, okay? It's not fair. I'm going to tell you, because I have been places, like when I was just recently in Philly and I'm with my kids and we were doing our thing, and there was a march going on. We don't know who these people are, and we don't know where this march is. And I just feel bad for these people that are sitting there eating just because they didn't know a march was happening. They could be tourists from wherever they're from. Point being, it's just kind of, it's a bad reference point.
I think it's still very symbolic in a lot of ways.
I guess, but you're just they're using an image that could be a million things. But anyway.
I think you have some unresolved trauma from going to Philly and not standing with the marching people.
No, I just feel like everybody participates in their own ways. That doesn't mean these people are.
Okay. I will not stand corrected. That is definitely New York City. And look, there are
not everybody has to be involved in every single thing. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't make these people are not like bad people.
I'm not saying that they all need to be involved, but there is something to be said for recognizing what's going on. Because as I've said, people ask me, do you know about my podcast, even in my line of work? I said, look, my politics is very agnostic. I just focus on a specific issue. And I will always stand on the side of justice. That's me. Now, is everybody going to agree on that sentiment? They may think that they do, but in reality, they don't. There's a lot of people who really like this idea of hierarchy, even a case system for that matter. There are people who are very content with that. I saw a YouTube clip the other day about advocating for feudalism, how feudalism would actually be better than capitalism. I mean, I'm not one to argue that point, but it shows you.
Well, kind of, in a way, I get that actually, because, and Rachel has said this before too, as well, because she knows this history, but that back in those days, the lords took care of their serfs. It was kind of a different mentality. It wasn't an every man for himself mentality. So you were definitely a serf, but you were part of I don't know. I think it's worse. I think capitalism is actually worse, but you know.